These very trying times. Welcome. Today is Monday, March 23rd, 2020. The time is 9:02 a.m. This is a special meeting with our Airport and Airport Advisory Board for an update. Calling this meeting to order. Attending in person are Commissioners Duncan and Filios. Joining us by phone is Commissioner Bill Brooks. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
We would like to use or address number 7 as first.
Okay. So item number 7 is a potential executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 74-2061F. Do we have a motion?
I move we enter into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 74-2061F.
And joining us.
I second the motion.
Sorry about that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan,
Aye.
Chairman Filios.
Aye, and we're entering into executive session with Deputy Civil Prosecuting Attorney Dave Ferguson. It's okay, it's all right.
Okay. We're back.
Okay, so the time now is 9:11. We're about to exit executive session. Is there a motion?
I move we exit executive session, authorizing the chairman to execute the engagement letter in defense of a Part 16 complaint in amount of not to exceed $20,000 with a monthly update to the commissioners.
You want to mention the firm that's being engaged?
Yes, and this is with Kaplan, Kirsch, Rockwell.
Okay, Bill?
Second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan,
Aye.
Chairman Philios.
Aye, and the motion is carried. Okay, then, so we'll move back to item D, which is business. And the first item would be the review of the airport fees, specifically Resolution 2017-08, sewer connection and monthly user fees. A discussion. Stephen?
Commissioners, as we started looking at our rates and our fees this last year, or this year, and our revenues, we started to realize that we were not going to be covering our expenses this year. And this is actually our response to this. This is also with the understanding that we are not yet looking at the City of Hayden's lawsuit and what came out of that, as well as the understanding that this is realistically a stopgap measure to get us through this year, with the understanding we're going to be addressing the City of Hayden, what came out of that lawsuit and that court case, that we're probably going to have to come back and raise our fees again, because there became a formula that came out of that lawsuit, and we need to follow that formula under state law. But we didn't have enough time to do that formula and really get a firm on board to do that calculation and measuring of what that fee would be. So this is really just to cover our costs through this next year, and then look at next year being more in line with the state law of what it's going to be. We're looking at talking about going for per wastewater unit being $18. That is an increase about 44%, but right now we're sitting at 12 WUs, and realistically, if you look at our system, we cover quite a few miles of piping and 3 lift stations for 55 clients, or right around 50 clients.
So for everybody's benefit, would you define WU?
WU is roughly 1,000 wastewater units as defined by what HARBS defines it as. Typically, we base our private storage hangar on as 3 WUs, which is half of what a typical residential house does. We do with this fee, we actually set it as, for a commercial entity, as a base measurement is 6, with the understanding, we put this in here, that we will review their, and after the first year, we'll review their actual usage. If it's higher than 6, we'll raise their price, and if it's lower than 6, it still remains at 6. Because the base commercial rate is 6, if it's a commercial entity.
Okay. Questions?
Do we need a public hearing to
Yes.
raise the fees?
We do.
Yes, we do. Uh-huh.
This resolution, this is just a conversation right now with the board, and we'll come back at a later date with the new resolution and ask to just, actually ask it a public hearing.
And is it possible to get that work done, to find out about the Hayden lawsuit, so we don't have to do this twice?
Really, we're gonna have to hire somebody to evaluate what the value of our system is. Because if you talk to City of Hayden, they actually hired a firm, did a true evaluation of the value of their system, and then that determines it based upon the replacement value is how you determine what you should charge. And we've never done that as an airport. Because as I've said for a long time, we're airport people, we're not sewer people.
Right.
Which is why I continue to try to give it to the City of Hayden.
Understood.
And when that becomes possible, it will happen.
Bill, questions?
No questions.
Okay, can we move on to item B?
Yep.
Okay, Resolution 2019-40, Coeur d'Alene Airport fees, general discussion.
We really aren't changing any fees other than the standard lease rate increase of the, there is an added sheet for you guys to review. It's just the CPI increase. For the lease rate hangers, it goes up to for private storage, 0.208, for commercial, 0.26, for non-aeronautical, it's 0.521. We are, for lease application fees, we are making it a little bit more streamlined. Before it was very convoluted, in my opinion. I will take full responsibility of that when I did that. We had it as based upon the square footage. We're just simplifying it, saying if it's a private storage hangar, it's $500 application fee, and if you're a commercial hangar, it's $12.50. We're not increasing the rates, it's just there. And that's really it for that. We're not changing any other fees.
Okay, CPI only.
Yep, CPI only. So that does not require a public hearing for any of that.
Okay. So no public hearing on this one, okay. Moving on,
No, hang on.
Yep, go right ahead, Leslie.
So the 500 for private hangar and 1250 for commercial, is that new? No,
It
that's,
was actually, we could charge up to $12.50 already. It's just we're streamlining it to say this is how we're charging it, instead of before it was based upon acreage or size of lease lots of what we did. It was, the $12.50 was based upon your monthly rate of half of it. And realistically, that could be a very easy, we could get to that justification of $12.50 very easily. But because we could never know what a lease lot size was until after the fact, it was very hard to do that, so we always were just charging $500 right off the bat anyways. So this just simplifies and says private or 500, commercial or $12.50, because we tend to spend a lot more time with the commercial entities, because we have to walk through parking requirements, sewer, fencing, a lot more things than just a private guy.
right. Okay.
so when you mention the fees of, say, for example, commercial 0.260, how does that relate to the 1250?
The $12.50 is just the application fee. Because
Okay, okay,
we do a lot of things of staff time, creation of leases, other things of covering our staff time.
and the 0.26 is per square foot per year, okay. Got it. Are we okay to move on?
Yep.
Okay, item C, discussion of new additional fees, airport user fee and rental car fee.
Yep, so this is a bit of an idea of whether you as the board want to go down this path. Really, I haven't even talked with the advisory board about this because I want to know whether there's support from you as the commission. This is a these are both very standard fees throughout the industry. A user fee, so the first one is basically a airport use fee. What it would be is you base it upon weight of the aircraft for non-based airplanes. And this happens at almost every airport throughout the country. There's something that the airports will charge for this. And we're talking anything above $12,500 because that's where you typically start to see the commercial activity start. And then when you go to 24,999 pounds, you're talking about $20. Most aircraft that say $20, that's not a big impact to them. But when you start looking at these numbers, when we started calculating it out, we're talking roughly between $120,000 and $200,000 to the airport for commercial, for this activity, just because of the number of operators.
So now, is this levied anytime an aircraft lands
Anytime
that exceeds that
aircraft-
weight
Yep.
limit? Okay.
Anytime it would be for non-based aircraft, so, because realistically, as I've always said, the transient aircraft that we have in and out of the airport, they do not pay their fair share to pay for the operation and maintenance of the airport. They pay a fuel float sometime, not all the time. And realistically, what I'd look for is the FBOs to collect this, and we would look to do what they do with the parking fees. They would keep 5% of it, and then
Okay.
the rest to us. And there'd be some oddities, I'll be fully admit, we don't catch everybody with our parking fees, but we catch most people with this. The second one would be a car rental fee. This is, if you rent any car within the country at any airport, there's a rental car fee. For example, in Williston, we were at 11.5%. Every car that rented out of the airport, we're at 11.5%. What I'm proposing is actually just do a 5% fee on every rental car that operates out of the
And today we collect nothing?
we collect nothing.
Okay.
So what would that fee go to pay for?
It would be basically the operations of the airport itself.
Okay. And would a public hearing be required?
These would both be public hearings.
Okay.
Okay.
I would recommend for the use fee, I would actually like to see that actually get split in half. Half goes to the operations of the airport and half goes into a capital fund, so that we then can say, so say we need to replace equipment or replace pavement that isn't FAA funded, things like that, it becomes a fund that we have a set aside capital cost and funding mechanism. Which right now we really don't.
So one half to operations, one half to capital.
Yeah, for the airport use fee.
Yep. Understood. Are we done there?
Yep.
Okay, item number 2. And once again, items A and C will require a public hearing. Item number 2, advisory board guidelines, potential action item.
Sure. Shortly after the advisory board was formed a number of years ago, we had some just very, I think it was a resolution which had never been updated. So for the past year, we have been working on updating those, or that guideline. And I don't, do you guys have a copy of it? Oh, you do? Okay. So we finally got it to a point where we could vote on it at the advisory board to make a recommendation that it come forward to you folks for approval. And so that was the recommendation of the advisory board to bring that forward to you.
Okay. Leslie, Bill, questions?
None.
And Stephen and staff has reviewed that, and they're in agreement with the wording on it.
So would we bring this before a business meeting to vote on?
I would say yes to put out a business meeting.
Okay. So we're done with item 2 then? Okay, so that'll be forwarded to a business meeting for potential board approval. Item number 3, Tim Combrick, recommendation to full member, action item.
So Shelley Patrick resigned effective last month. She thought her term was over at that moment in time when it actually was through the end of this year.
Right.
But she didn't, she has a lot of other stuff going on, so she needed to really step down. So since Tim Combrick was our alternate, the advisory board felt it appropriate to move him into her slot for the remainder of this year. So they did make that recommendation to come forward to you for a vote.
Okay.
So do we know, is she stepping down as of April 1st?
It was
March.
31st.
March 31st, okay.
Okay.
So our recommendation is that Tim Combrick fill in for her until the end of this year, and then, of course, he would have to reapply or do whatever.
Sure.
the
Understood.
procedure is.
Okay, so we'll forward this to the business meeting as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Joan. Letter of agreement, LOA, for parachute operator, discussion.
So this is just
Stephen.
something that was on the agenda. The way this is set up is that there would be a specialized operator on the airport, and the way that is handled through our minimum standards is it's through the advisory board and myself, and we set up guidelines because they are an operator that would operate at the airport. This is realistically a pretty hotly contested item on the advisory board. However, way a parachute operates is the way the VFA views it. They have the same rights as any airplane that lands in the airport. Does not matter if they are uncontrolled, land on the airport. So realistically, if we do not set up some sort of guidelines for them to operate on the airport, they have the same right to land on a runway and shut it down basically for 5 to 10 minutes while they walk off. Which is why this whole agreement that you should have came about, which is basically making them have the same rules and standards that we have throughout the other airports for everything that's on the airport as commercial operators.
Is that part?
No, it's, should have been in the packet I gave you.
I don't see it.
Fee proposal, hold on, Stephen.
It was in the, I know it was in the email that I sent over.
Okay, yeah, it's not here, though.
I apologize if I pretty sure it was on my list of emails to you. Basically, it's a very similar to operation to if you were working as a flight school.
Okay,
The big issue is, though, that they do, when they operate, they shut down traffic to certain areas. And as they land on the airport, we really only have about 2 locations on the airport that can handle them. It's to the east of the fire station, to the west of Empire. Those are really the only 2 locations, and they do impact traffic on runway 6 and 24. The only other location that we can truly accommodate them is actually right, just northeast of the gun club, which isn't a great spot for them either because they have shotguns going off.
Right.
Which is why it's a very hotly contested item, which we still need to have it in place. It's still something where realistically I'm going to agree with that we are going to move forward with, because we need something in place that if we are going to have some sort of leverage to say that you are not allowed to operate on the field, we need something that says that you violated our agreement.
So how many of these do we have?
Parachute operators, 1.
oh, how active?
No active, there's no active yet. This will be the only one.
Okay,
And they have to have a facility to operate out of. I had been under the impression, because I had gotten an email from Stancraft stating that they had been in an agreement. That was at least my reading of it. They are not finished with their agreement yet. So unless they sign on that agreement, they will not be operating out of the field because they cannot operate out of a parking spot.
Right.
So, and we'll see what happens with it. And realistically, if everything continues on this trajectory of social distancing and things, I don't think that it will be operating either way this summer.
Sure, so I imagine you'll bring the agreement to legal?
Legal has already reviewed it. It's
Okay.
reviewing it right now, actually.
good.
Okay,
It's been submitted to the-
So you're calling it an LOA, is it more of an MOU? Is it a memorandum of understanding? I
It's a
mean,
letter of agreement,
Yeah.
basically that we're agreeing that this is how we shall operate together.
okay,
all right, so I guess when legal gets done, we'll review that, or we can review it in your email.
Okay.
so absent the guidelines, then basically they operate as any other aircraft?
Yep, they can operate anywhere, any shape or form that they want to on the airport. Because we don't address them in the minimum standards, because from talking with the staff when we were writing them, we had never had a parachute operator who wanted to really operate on the field.
So would the LOA potentially restrict? Would it be more restrictive than the benefits they would enjoy if it didn't exist? If they were operating as any other aircraft?
Yes.
Okay,
The plan is to modify the minimum standards to move most, if not all, of the LOA items into the minimum.
Okay,
standards
fair enough.
standard section.
got it. Okay, so legal is reviewing that?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, item number 5, airport access changes discussion.
So this is just a notification that we had talked about, we were going to change the access.
Right.
We actually delayed that indefinitely, mostly because we don't want 400 to 500 people walking through my office while they're getting their access cards and things like that. As well as we've been notified by shippers for specific items for parts that we need to make those changes. They're not shipping. So we are running into issues with installation as well. So we're delaying it indefinitely until such time as we can safely and
Provide access? Okay.
do the installations.
Okay. Any questions or discussion on item 5? Okay, item 6, Forest Service ramp.
So this is just a discussion item of where we see, as the airport, the future long-term goals of the Forest Service and the airport coming together. Realistically, the Forest Service, in my opinion, once their lease is expiring in probably about 20 years, they will not be on this airport. They just do not have the space to do it. And this is a solution of what it can be. We are actually working with them right now on a memorandum of understanding that basically states that they would look to rent this facility of what we would build. There's in the packet of what it is. Basically, we would look to actually build this location and facility for them. It would just be a turnaround aprons. We actually show this as part of our ALP to build this for them. And we would actually be able to charge them back all the money that we would cost to build this. But realistically, I don't foresee the Forest Service staying on this facility because they do not have space. And we continue to be pushing the space that they need out because we continue to build hangars where they go usually during the summer.
How much space do they need?
They need about twice to 3 times the space that they have right now.
How much do they have currently?
They lease about 4 acres, but most of that space is grassland.
Okay.
If you look, they have basically space for 1 large aircraft and a couple small aircraft to operate. And they always, every summer, they are renting a ramp on a daily basis from the airport. And it's a huge bonus to the airport because it's additional revenue. But as we build out additional space and hangars in that ramp, and we've been having conversations with people for that, we need to look at accommodating them, and we won't get paid for this, I will be the first to say this, but we need a plan on how do we develop space so that we can accommodate them into the future, because otherwise they will not be here into the future.
So what is it that we would be building?
Is that image that's in the packet,
Uh-huh.
basically ramp turnaround space,
Okay.
and they would be what are known as pits. They would be a space where they can install their systems in the middle every summer and have their aircraft parked there and operate out of. And that's all we'd be building, and there's actually a cost estimate associated with it. In my opinion, TO went high on it because there's 20% contingencies. This summer, my staff is actually, as time permits, we're gonna actually do the ground excavation on that area to prep that area as well. So you're looking at half the construction cost is already gonna be taken care of. My guess is we're looking at something similar to what we paid for the Forest Service ramp to build that out, about $350,000 what we paid to a contractor to pave that area. However, we can easily charge the Forest Service every time they rent that out of their fire funds because they know they have to rent space to make that work, and they understand that. So,
Where are their aircraft in the winter?
they're all contractors, and they go south, they go to South America, they go everywhere. So it's just something to start thinking about now of we need to start planning for this future. And I'm not saying I'm not asking you to do anything today. It's just something in the future we're going to have to do something.
Understood. Okay. Questions? Comments? Public comment? Hearing none. Time is now 9:34, and this meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.